are Kelsey and Darrick Stiff, and they not only spend their days working for a living with kids, but then they also volunteer outside of that. And they work with kids at David Douglas and with Young Life. Kelsey teaches health and coaches softball at David Douglas, and Darrick is a pediatric speech pathologist. And their combined experience with at-risk youth has given them insight into knowing how growing up in poverty affects children. They presented at previous Adorn and Grace Mentor trainings, and we're very happy that they're back today.
Thank you. All right, I hope that I was able to get everyone one of these. Did anyone not get one? If you didn't, I have one left. All right, so like she said, we are going to discuss mentoring youth in poverty. And not just necessarily poverty meaning money. We'll go into exactly what our definition of poverty is going to be, but the goal is for us to kind of better understand the kids that we're pursuing and how does that change the way that we go about it, because it may look very different than what we were used to when we were growing up. So our goal is for it to be super interactive. At any point, if there's ever a question that you have and you want to answer it right then, just raise your hand. We'd be more than happy to answer it. Or write it down at the end. We'll be answering questions then as well. And we want to learn from each other. So there's going to be times where we have you get with people next to you, and we'll put a question up on the board, and I want you to talk about it. I want us to share experiences, because I know that's one of the best ways to learn. There's a lot of people in this room who come from different walks of life and work with different kids. So I think it's vital that we share those experiences with each other. Go for it.
So like you guys heard, Kelsey and I grew up in Southeast Portland. Went to David Douglas, where we both now lead Young Life for the past 7 or 8 years. So we are very connected to the area, our kids. We know the area and how it's changed over the last 15 to 20 years with gentrification and all of that stuff, but that's what we do.
Kids.
And these are just a few of the kids that we see and hang out with all the time.
Yeah, so I kind of work on a different level than Darrick. I wear multiple hats as far as working with these kids. I am a high school health teacher, so a lot of the topics that we've heard today and what we're going to share come up on a daily basis in my classroom. So I have that perspective. I'm also the head softball coach, so I have a tighter-knit group of girls that I work with on a daily basis. And then Young Life is something that we both do. And that one's really fun because we get to invite kids into our lives and into our homes. And that's what they're most interested in. And yeah, that's just, like we said, some of our kids in our home. We're going to do something that might make some people feel uncomfortable. Sorry, I like pushing the boundaries a little bit. And it's called the Privilege Walk. Some of you may have done it before, especially if you've heard us speak, but it's huge. It's very eye-opening. Our goal is to illuminate privileges that we have as individuals, so we can recognize ways that we can use what we have to help the girls or students that we work with. So we're going to actually go outside and do this so we can spread out. So grab your jackets if you want, but we're going to go outside and get in just a straight line, shoulder to shoulder. Couple of questions that we just want you and a few people next to you to chat about. The first, what was your gut reaction to where you find yourself at the end of the walk? Are you surprised where you are? How does it feel to be in the front or in the middle or in the back? Did you come to any new realizations? What had the most important impact? And where do you feel like a majority of the kids you work with would end up in relation to the starting point? So I'll give you 3-4 minutes just with a few people next to you. Go ahead and unpack those 3 questions. Go for it. What was your gut reaction to where you find yourself or where you found yourself at the end of this walk? Can I get a brave volunteer? What was like your gut reaction?
My gut reaction was gratefulness and a little bit of surprise.
Did you have your hand up?
I feel very privileged.
Someone that was maybe towards the back, or would you like? He was doing it too. You may not have noticed.
It was way back there.
You have bigger steps.
3 of us.
Do you want to share what was it like?
It was kind of interesting. I mean, I've done this before, but obviously this is a different group. So to see the vast, we all started in this row, see the vast kind of valley that was in between was very interesting to see for me.
All right. Was anyone surprised at where they ended up? I feel like some of us maybe have never really thought about some of the things. Like as I was reading the statements, I heard some people like, oh. Like anyone surprised? Just raise your hand if you were kind of surprised. Anyone? What about surprised at where other people were? That one. I feel like as adults we're more shocked at that than necessarily where we're at, because we've had time to analyze our own lives. When I do this with my high school students, and when I do it with them, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like their best friend and them are totally separate, and they thought that they had like lived the same life. But for adults, we kind of know, but it's just shocking to look and see where other people are. Where do we feel like a majority of our kids are? Just tell me. Towards the back, maybe even with the line, maybe even behind the starting point. A lot of our kids, that's what they have to work with. That's where they're coming from.
So, I think poverty kind of comes up in this extent when we see that poverty in those statements wasn't just about resources like money, which we all kind of think of poverty as related to money, but we saw in that privilege walk that some of those things that we have aren't just monetary. They're not things that we can cash in. So poverty is the extent in which someone does without resources. It is more about resources than about money. So you can see if you had more access to resources, you were probably at the front. If you had less of those resources, you were towards the back. So Kelsey's going to talk a little bit more about what those resources might be.
These are probably the most common resources that we'll think of. Obviously there's more, but I just want to talk about these ones. Financial, that's first and foremost the one that pops into our mind when we think of poverty. Do our kids have enough money to meet their needs? Next, knowledge of hidden rules. This is huge. Like knowing social cues, knowing habits of a group or the group that they're trying to be a part of. Just mental, reading, writing skills to deal with daily life, basic problem solving skills, relational role models, access to adults who are appropriate, nurturing, not self-destructive. A lot of our kids do not have that. Spiritual resources, physical resources, like our kids are physically healthy or have access and know where to get like mental health, physical health resources, emotional and support system, friends, family, backup resources, backup like go-to person if you're like number 1 and number 2 aren't available, who are you going to go to?
So there's 2 different types of poverty. There's situational poverty, which is usually a shorter term, either from a death or illness or loss of a job. Divorce can also cause that. And you'll usually see these kids are a little bit less apt to tell you what's going on in their lives or that they need help with resources because they usually are taking a step back and losing resources. So they're not as eager to tell you what they're missing or what they're lacking because to them it's so foreign.
And it's embarrassing for a lot of them.
Versus generational poverty, which is, kids that are 3-4 years old. My parents were on government assistance, I'm on government assistance, their grandparents were on government assistance. And these kids, we have kids that will tell you, I'm on food stamps, I don't care, I'll take this food home, I don't really care what you think about it, because it's just what I'm used to getting handouts.
Would refugees fall in the first category?
I think that is a whole other realm, definitely. I think they can, but I think that is something totally different than situational and generational, because they're coming with like literally no background, no resources. But again, I feel like some pieces of each can fit into it, but it's its own different beast. Great question. We have one guy that we're working with right now. He's a junior. He is very open about what assistance programs his family is using, and he swears he's going to the NBA. Swears. We don't have the heart to crush his dreams quite yet, but he'll figure it out. But he, no joke, was over at our house for dinner and was talking to me about how he's going to the NBA. He was doing all these big things. I'm like, you go for it. But I'm going to be on food stamps when I'm in the NBA. So not even like no shame of like, yes, I'm on food stamps and I get all this assistance, but just they don't even have the knowledge of even why they're on those programs. Like I'd explain like, yeah, you don't really qualify for food stamps if you're in the MPA, and here's why. Like I literally had to break it down for him. So that's just like, it was just a normal way of life for him. Like, yeah, we eat a bunch when we get the money every month, and then we starve the rest, and that's just what happens. And I'm gonna be famous and still get food stamps. I'm like, not quite. Not quite. I wanted to bring it in a little closer to home. So poverty in our area, specifically Multnomah County, about 1/3 of Multnomah County's households are living below the poverty line. They aren't able to meet their own needs. I've broken it down even further. This is the free and reduced lunch rates for 2016-17. And to be eligible for free and reduced lunch, your family has to make below a certain amount. But the parents also have to go through the process of signing up, so they have to get the paperwork and do it. So the numbers that you see, I guarantee the real ones are even higher, because I know I can think of 10 kids right now who would qualify, but their parents just didn't fill out the paperwork. So think even a little bit higher when you see these numbers. Franklin High School is at 54.2% poverty. Madison, 63.1%. Centennial, we've got 69.1%. Gresham Barlow, 56.5%. And I know a lot of us are working with students in the David Douglas School District where I work. District-wide, it's 75.6%, and I've broken it down to some of the schools, not all of them. But Ron Russell Middle School is at 79.9%. Floyd Light Middle School is at 75.1%. In Earl Boyles Elementary, which is literally right next to Ron Russell Middle School, 94.5% of kids, and they only have 480 students, so that means 454 of the 480 are kids that are on free and reduced lunch. Keep in mind there's probably more that qualify that just haven't done the paperwork. So those are the kids that we're working with. A majority of the kids that we interact with on a daily basis, every single one of us, this is their reality, which is why it's so important for us to at least figure out somewhat where they're coming from. I'm a super visual person, so this is just kind of like a visual map. This is us right over here. Here's zoomed in of us over here, Happy Valley, and then this is Mount Scott, and it just goes down, and that's us.
So we're going to take a little quiz. Kelsey's going to hand out to you guys. And you are just going to check each line that applies to you. And then at the end, you're going to add up all those checks that you have, and we'll get you the results to how you think you could survive in poverty.
All right, here's the scoring, what they mean. Like 17 and up, you're straight savvy. You might even thrive in poverty. 17 and 9, you'll be able to keep your head above water. 8 to 4, you should probably start looking for help. And 0 to 3, you're as good as dead. Sorry. You would be completely unable to survive in poverty. Hopefully, you never have to. I myself scored in the 0 to 3, thinking back to like when I was in high school, especially 0 to 3. And I did it super sneaky, but I was talking to our kids and I was like asking the questions that were on here. I didn't like hand it to them, but just through conversation. I can think of a couple kids that have 19 out of the 21 easy, and they're like 15 years old. And here I am almost 30, and I'm like, maybe I know 8 to 4 now? Like, it's crazy. And what you just went through, those are things that we call like hidden rules. Specifically, hidden rules of poverty. So what are some of the hidden rules, or like social norms, we can call them, that you've seen in poverty or in your kids' culture? Just take like a minute, chat with the person next to you. What are some of the norms that you've seen in poverty or in your kids' culture? Go for it. Think about how they spend money. Think about relationships, conflict. Alrighty. What are some things that we see in our girls or our teenagers that we work with in regards to spending money, relationships, views on family, conflict? What are some of the things? What is like their social norm? Yeah.
One of the things that I see a lot is that they will be more likely to get a specialty drink at a coffee shop than I can. I feel like I can. And they have better cell phones than I do.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. What else have we seen? I was just telling a group back here, I've had students that I know are homeless, but come to school in like True Religion jeans, like the nicest of the nice, and I'm like, you are sleeping in a car right now. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me, but that's one of the hidden rules or a norm that they need to uphold. Yeah.
I think a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, explain more.
Just because they're living in the situation that they live in, that they feel like they're owed.
Mm-hmm. It's big right now. Definitely. And not even just with poverty. I feel like just teens right now in general. Definitely. Any other ones?
We have a family member who we kind of watched come out of this, but I was amazed that she was able to get disability for her son having ADHD. She really knew how to
Work the system.
the doctor
Mhm.
and the process.
Yep. Something that most of us would have like no idea where to start.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Good. We're gonna look at.
Some of those hidden rules and like give them titles and names and give you some examples that you guys have already identified, but we're gonna give them a little bit more in-depth look. So the first one is any extra money is shared. So you'll never get ahead, and when there's money available, you might as well share it, kind of feast or famine. So I'll have kids that they worked all summer, first jobs, talk to them first week of school. How much money do you have? 0. But I bought him those shoes, and I bought him that shirt, and we had Red Robin, and we went to Chipotle, and we had all these great meals, and we have nothing to show for it after 3 months of work. Another one is discipline is about penance. Moms are typically kind of the enforcer and the I'm in charge of discipline, and nobody else can do that. So you'll see moms showing up, yelling at police officers, school enforcement officers who are arresting kids for having drugs in school, and the mom is yelling at the cop because she's arresting her son, even though he was caught with drugs on his person.
On a school campus.
On a school campus, because she is the one who's supposed to discipline, and not the police officers. They're not there to do any of that.
I feel like this next one's kind of just teens in general, but even more teens in poverty. Oh, it's small, sorry. Food is equated with love. Food is very much the way to a kid's heart in general, but even more so when food's not a normal thing for them. I have kids on a daily basis, our Young Life kids come in because they know I put all my leftovers in my fridge at school. So they're like, oh, what do you got for food today? And they find if I don't have anything, like we went out the night before or something like that, like, why would you do that? Like, why? Where's my food? Sorry, I wanted a date night with my husband and I didn't bring extra. It was like, but it's like, why? Like, it's, you literally see their face shut down because it's almost like, well, you don't care. You weren't thinking about me. You don't care about me. And I'm like, no, I just wanted a night out. Like, I'm sorry. Fighting and physical violence are 100% a way of life. It's the norm. Where to you and I, it would be like a shocker. Those in poverty don't have their own space. A lot of them share their room with 1, 2, 3, 4 other people sometimes. So when they are incredibly angry, they don't have a place to go and retreat. So their natural instinct a lot of the time is to use violence. And they also, a lot of times, feel like they need people to defend them physically in a lot of neighborhoods that we're in, or just like that's what their family's always kind of done. So just them being born into that family, they're in harm's way. So they get involved in gangs or other similar groups for that protection piece. A lot of times respect is linked to violence, especially with young boys in the poverty culture.
So another rule is rarely, if ever, are the police called or involved in situations. And I think now more so than ever, with the availability of cameras with cell phones and what kids see, now they can get online and see, police shootings and see people die. And, they now equate what they see, this little snippet of the interaction, as police are bad, police are, there to, rip my family apart, to hurt my family, to take them away. They took my dad away, not thinking about what your dad did or what your dad was involved with, but, the police are the cause of that. And I think now with our culture, with the music they listen to, police are portrayed in negative lights more often than not. So we don't need to get them involved. We can figure this out ourselves. And entertainment and relationships are the most important. If there's extra money, it should be spent on those two things. So, this comes with phones and TVs and, even just their stories with each other. Like, everything is about, what we did together and all these experiences, and oftentimes they're inflated really big because they want to just make this larger-than-life appearance about the things that they do or that they're entertained by.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of our kids just kids in general, don't like to show weakness. We don't like to show weakness. So a lot of the time they'll use the entertainment to mask that. Like I know in the classroom, like the biggest class clowns are the ones that just aren't getting it, like whatever I'm teaching. I'm sure, Donnie, you see that in math quite a bit too. Just the kids that are the biggest pains are the ones that just, there's a disconnect, but they're afraid to say like, hey, I need help. It's, well, I'm just going to make this fun, and I'm just going to make this a show for everybody else. Marriage and divorce are important only if there's like property to distribute or custody of kids. It's very common for relationships to become intertwined within the family. Because there can be so many relations, it's just so intertwined, and a lot of times we've had this, so I put this as an example. Your sister's third husband becomes your brother's ex-wife's live-in boyfriend. Like, that is like normal. Like, we look at that and be like, what? Like, have to break it down, and it's like, no, it's family, it's happens. Marriage also is looked at like, what's kind of the point of getting married? We're pretty much family anyway, so why would I even get married? And in the mindset of poverty, a lot of times like a real man has to like physically work hard, be a fighter, but also be a lover, but no one really knows how those two intertwine. And that just leads to the cycle of fighting, running from the law, running from people close to him because he's running from the law, returning, and then the cycle just starts over and over and over again. And a lot of times it might not be our kids that are doing this quite yet, or hopefully ever, but they're living in homes where this is the norm. So they've experienced this, whether it was them personally or their family that has experienced it. It's just normal.
Planning is another huge thing. Organizational skills are not really taught in poverty. Planning really is the 1st and the 15th is like the next goal in mind is just to make it till then, really. So you'll see a lot of kids staying up. Well, I have this paper due tomorrow, so when I get home, I'll probably start at like midnight, and then hopefully like get to school early enough to like try to print it off or get something done. Even though I've known about it for weeks. You know, so things like that, planning ahead to get places or even to get home from places, and the communication with their family or other resources to make that happen often doesn't happen. And you know, the mating dance, it's all about using your body in a sexual way, and that could be your only resource really sometimes for kids. It could be for attention, it could be for, again, to acquire resources, or even to get affirmation, even though it's not positive, it's affirmation from someone. And I've seen this with a girl, literally had 4 guys take a picture of her butt. They're all looking at it together, and she's just like glowing, like thinking like this is the greatest thing, as these 4 guys are just like, just talking about her body. And I was just like,
And
what?
she's like 14.
And these are all, the guys are 2 and 3 years older than her, and they're just like, and she's just as happy as can be to watch this happen.
Next, there are really no rules as far as who's your family and who's not your family. Family changes very often. The patterns of family are very different from middle class. In poverty, there can be multiple relationships, like male identities, always kind of in and out. Could be multiple at a time, could be multiple over the course of their life, just in and out. There's ever-changing allegiances, there's favoritism, just, it's very, very different. We just had, one of our guys was asked, like, what is Young Life, the ministry that we volunteer for? Another student asked him, and he was like, I don't know, like, we hang out and now we're family. That was literally his answer, and I'm like, oh. And now he's like kind of started calling us mom and dad, which I don't really know how I feel about that. But I'm like, I definitely don't look at you as a son, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, like, we are his parents, and that's just so sad to me, because I would not look at us as parents to this kid, but we are his family, and yeah.
Even kids with complete homes that
Yeah.
that.
So it's not just like dad's gone, mom's gone, whatever. It's literally, like we said, it's lack of resources, like it's the poverty mindset, not just money, not just family, and these can impact everyone. It's crazy.
One thing I've also seen is that they will resent or even disown if one of the family members leaves and does something with their life and walks away. They think that if that's the wrong thing to do.
That's his story.
That's kind of my story.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
No, it's, I mean,
We
my
need to talk
family-
about it.
My family all kind of works together, and they, you know, like actually work together in a facility together. And I'm one of the only people in my family that has gone to school, completed, now works a job outside of the home. And because of that, I miss out on people's birthdays and other things that, because they're all together, they just do, and then I see it on Facebook afterwards, and I'm just not invited because we just didn't think about you because you're not here. So it happens, yeah.
Consciously or subconsciously, definitely. These next few are just some of the most prevalent that we have seen working with our kids. Again, there's many others, but just the ones that we see most often. Just the registers of language, casual register versus formal register. Kids that have grown up in poverty, oftentimes when speaking or writing, like, know what they want to talk about, but they don't really know how to get there, and they're just going to keep going and going and going, and we're like, where the heck are you going with this? No one knows. It's just very kind of all over the place, where those of us that maybe did not grow up in poverty have more like a formal register. We know where we want to go. We know how to get there in a conversation or while writing a paper. We're very like orderly and sequential, and not only just with how we organize organize our conversations or organize things that we write, even the words that we use. This is a study from a few years ago, but this is just goes over the number of words that kids are exposed to versus their like economic class. So kids in poverty are exposed to about 13 million words and 1 affirmation for 2 discounts. Middle class, twice as much, 26 million words and 2 affirmations for every discount. And then kids that grow up in wealth oftentimes are exposed to about 45 million words and 6 affirmations for 1 discount. So not even just word exposure, but just strokes and discounts, affirmations and prohibitions.
What does that mean?
So like if I were to just affirm someone, do you know what affirm?
Yeah.
Like if I were to talk someone up, this is like to say something bad about them. So not only words in general, but the words that are used a lot of times, words that are used more positive versus more negative.
And I would say for poverty now, it's probably even
Higher,
higher
yeah.
of discounts. You know, I had a group of probably 6 or 7 freshman guys watching a basketball game, you know, something they should all love. Instead of watching the basketball game, not one of them, like even up until halftime, could say a positive thing about something. Like all of them were telling stories about how stupid somebody was, how what they were wearing was stupid, you know, this stupid situation you had at school that day, or your dumb interaction with a girl. It was all they could do, until the point where I had to make them run outside as a consequence until they could say something positive.
They're running laps in our cul-de-sac in the rain one night. I probably shouldn't have done that, but it made them realize, like, wow, we really don't know how to talk in a positive way. They don't know how. They don't have the skills to affirm, because they've never seen it themselves. They're getting talked down to twice as much as they're getting affirmed. So it's not the norm for them whatsoever. So that's something as mentors that we need to model and hopefully teach.
And at the same time, I think knowing too that they do hear how X amount of negative things for every positive one, that it's going to be so foreign to them to hear anything positive about themselves that it's going to be uncomfortable. And they're probably going to push away from you because of it, because it's like, you're so weird for even like wanting to be around me or even saying nice things about me. Like, I don't get this. This is just, you're not, like, I need something to show me that you're like real.
It's very foreign.
Technology, as Donna said, is a huge thing. It's all about status. So, you know, a kid will have an iPhone 8, but, you know, the shoes on their feet are worn and holes in the feet because, you know, just I have to have this thing. This connects me to the rest of the world. It gives me something to show friends that I have something to my name. Their interactions on social media often trump what they do in real life and the conversations that they have with kids. I've seen kids literally in the same room, across the room, texting each other about somebody else in the room instead of just confronting it head on. Or taking pictures, and then the whole group is sitting on the couch together watching like what they just did instead of actually like talking about it. They're all sitting there watching it individually on their own phone, but that's just kind of the norm.
Dating, this is really funny. When dating just with teens and girls is funny, but I like had kids that like ask their boyfriend or girlfriend out over text message, like that's normal. Break up with them over text message. That's not even a phone call. Like it's literally like a text message now because they don't have that skills to do it face to face.
How they appear on social media to their peers is more important than to adults. They'll post things that I will see them like later on, like, why did you put that online? And they're like, oh, you saw that? Or, you know, they're like, oh, well, you know, I had like 200 people watch it. So it's like, so that just negates anything else. Like, you don't care who else sees it. As long as somebody sees it, that's all it's about. And there's a large disconnect between what they post and the consequences. I mean, we were just talking about this the other day. Kids will now post on Snapchat, like stories of illegal activities, carrying guns to school, drugs that they have at school, not even thinking about, like, anybody who's at that location can also see what you posted. And your name is attached to it, your tag, like you're tagged to that post. So now you can be held responsible for that because you have posted that.
Skewed views of just sexuality and relationships is another one that's huge. Girls often see their body as a resource. They will use it to get what they want rather than like viewing it as something sacred. The things that I've seen most common in the high school, they'll use their sexuality for rides, for food, attention, anything. And guys often see women's bodies as a resource to improve their social status. So just the body in general and sexuality in general is a resource versus like a gift and something sacred.
Transportation, not a lot of
Sure,
our
you
kids
guys have experienced this.
drive. We started leading at a time that like Southeast Portland was kind of at this shift, and we went from maybe picking up 2 kids a week or something, and to now where we have leaders that are taking multiple trips out to get kids. Well, they will grab a car full of kids and come back, and then grab another car full of kids and come back. And so I've taken probably 8 kids home in a 5-passenger car before.
Don't tell.
But that's kind of the reality, and you kind of have to be aware that these kids again can't plan, so be ready to have that kid that's gonna last minute call you 2 minutes before this thing's about to start and you're already there and now you're leaving and you're late. But knowing that that kid needs to be there and there's a reason that God sent them to you to bring them to that place. So even though you're missing out, like you're needed to get that kid to where they need to be. And they don't see the importance of planning to achieve goals. Jediah, who's a kid of ours.
Like half these stories are about this one.
This is about this one.
Poor guy. We love him.
But 2 years ago, we took him to camp, and he had no money. He had worked all of his money worked off the majority of his camp money through scholarships and other things, but he had no money to go to camp. And we're going up to Canada, so he needed money to get up there for food and other stuff while we were there. And he had talked to his dad, and his dad had given him probably $200, and he never talks to his dad, so you would think he would hold on to this money and cherish it and use it for this memorable experience. Before we leave for camp, this money is all gone. And I asked him, well, what did you do with it? Well, I had the money, so I went. My mom works at Target, so she has discounts on games, so I went and bought 2 games. Then, I went and got Teriyaki King across the street. And he's like, the rest of the money, I can't even tell you where it went. So within days, this $200 was gone, and he had to scrounge money from friends to buy everything that he had up there.
The same kid just a couple weeks ago had $10. We have these things at our school. They're ASB stickers, so they get you discounts like into dances, and you can get into games for free. So his mom, which is a big deal, gave him $10 because his mom never gives him money. So his mom gave him $10. He goes to the office to get it added to his card, and it was $15. So what does he do? Turn around. There's our student coffee shop. He's gonna buy a $5 coffee with that $10. And then he comes in my room, and I'm like, did you get your sticker? No, I got this coffee. What? I'm like, well, I had $10 and I needed 15. I'm like, so you couldn't have just worked off or gotten 5? I know you can get $5 more. He's like, no, there's a coffee shop, so I wanted a coffee. Okay. And this is a huge one right now that I'm seeing with seniors because you can apply for financial aid beginning of October now instead of January. So this, right now, a lot of my girls are frozen. They have no idea what to do. And all throughout high school, we've been planning and talking, and this is what you want to do. Okay, what do we need to do to get there? They've done all the steps, and now that it's time to do it, they just don't. And their parents don't know how to do it either, so it's not like they're going to get a push at home. So a lot of them just stay stuck, unfortunately, until it's too late.
Isn't that a form of self-sabotage?
Yes, they're scared to death. Absolutely scared to death, because they would be leaving what they know. They would be leaving a lot of times their family's never gone to school or never had a career job, something reliable. That's not normal for them, so they are scared. So subconsciously, they're just going to self-sabotage and just not do anything.
And they're also seen as kind of snakes, like you're backstabbing your family. You're gonna leave us because you think you're better than us to go do something for yourself. Like, but also parents will stifle a lot of this too, because to parents, their kids are resources. They can be daycare providers. They can be a lot of times they're breadwinners for their families. So for them to leave is almost selfish, because now mom actually has to take care of these kids or find some place for your siblings to go after school, and I don't have the money to pay for those 2 kids to go somewhere else. Or if you leave, then I lose out on government assistance, or I lose out on somebody else who's helping provide funds for the house. So a lot of times parents will see that. Even taking kids to camp for a week, their parents are just freaking out, thinking, what am I going to do for that week while you're gone? I don't even have the ability to plan to have you gone for a week.
I have a girl this weekend, actually. Today she's on a college visit for softball. She's being recruited, and her mom it was Southern Oregon, so she's down there for the weekend, and her mom was so angry that she was going down there because who was going to drive her sister to her water polo tournament? So instead of just being like elated that her daughter was just asked to come down, potentially earn a college scholarship, have her school paid for, she's angry because, well, now your sister doesn't have a ride to water polo, so she's not going to be able to go. And it's just twisted a little bit. We've brought this up multiple times already. But in order to leave poverty, you're going to lose relationships. And you have to be okay with losing relationships. And that's something that a lot of our kids cannot even imagine. And they shouldn't have to, in a perfect world, imagine that. But unfortunately, it's the reality. And in order to have the courage or the skills and the resources to leave that is where we all come in. And that's what we're going to chat about now.
So you're going to discuss with your groups for each of the hidden rules that we talked about and identified earlier. Take a few minutes to discuss how have you seen these hidden rules play out in the lives of kids that you work with, and 2, which is 1.5.
Oh, that's weird. Hey, on your thing it says 2, I swear.
How does knowing these hidden rules affect how we should be serving these kids that we work with?
So we kind of already discussed this one before we broke it down. You focus more on this one. How does it impact us as their mentors? A couple of minutes. Go for it. I want to focus more on this second one. How does knowing these hidden rules affect how we should be serving the kids that we work with? Just like, what are 1 or 2 ways that you guys talked about? Yeah.
Encouraging.
Tell me more.
Just encouraging them to make right decisions and good decisions.
And maybe even backtrack even more, explaining what the right decision is, because a lot of them think they may be.
And explain more consequences.
Yes.
And the ramifications from their decisions.
Yep.
Are
Walk
real.
through the process with them.
Exposing them to a different reality.
Yes. Definitely.
I think it also gives a little bit of understanding. I was just saying in our group that there is that bit of frustration that you get because you're like, why? Like we've had this conversation 5 times. Why is this still a thing? And recognizing that sometimes you have to track it back further than you think.
Yeah.
Where you might get it on the 3rd conversation, these kids have never had that experience. They've never had any of that modeled to them.
You're rewriting their reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes going back, they have to go back into their reality and trying to catch up with you with your reality.
Yes.
And, it's a lot easier to fall back into this reality
Totally.
than it is to make steps and plan or whatever to progress into the other reality.
Yep. Especially if you're the only one in that new foreign reality and the rest of their life isn't. Yeah.
So basically, why would they want to choose to be in somebody else's new reality when it's like, or are we trying to do something that, it's not going to work, or is it better for them anyway? You know, I mean, it's confusing.
It's complex, yeah.
Well, they have to trust you too. So you have to build trust with them, or else they'll be like, oh, that's not for real. That doesn't really exist until they trust you, I think.
Yeah. I think for Darrick, was that trust piece. Like, he saw something that, like, his mentor had, and he didn't necessarily know what it was, but he trusted him enough just to follow, even though he didn't know why he was doing half the things or where he was going. But there was something about that man that I want. Part of it was Jesus, obviously, but so many more things. And he just trusted him, and he's like, here we go, I'm along for the ride. We're going to chat about, like, why does all that matter and what we can do, essentially. Our kids, sorry it's small again, our kids need Jesus. Yes, that is our end goal, is to be able to talk about Jesus and share the gospel with our kids, but they need so much more than that on a very basic level. We're also called to be the hands of justice for our kids. Again, we want to be able to share the gospel and talk about Jesus, but we need to act as those hands of justice and share what is right, what is wrong, or how to make those right and wrong decisions, or whatever. If they can get out of the cycle of poverty, it gives them an opportunity to see hope in the world. A lot of kids are blinded by poverty, to be honest. They literally don't talk about anything positive because they don't see anything positive. They are very much blinded. So our goal is to give them hope, even if it's just a little bit. Another reason why this matters, the cycle of poverty can ultimately hold them back from fully experiencing God sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. There are so many kids that I can think of that can use the skills that they naturally have to serve God, but they don't because they're busy working 3 jobs. They're hauling their siblings around because of the taxi driver, because they're the only one in the house that has their license. They're supporting their parents and families financially, emotionally, mentally, and they can't fully see their potential, and they can't fully be the person that God made them to be and to go out into their community and use their gifts and use their talents, because there's so many other things that are on the forefront of their mind.
So how, as volunteers and people working with youth, how do we fill the emotional bank to help provide resources for kids? And I think the biggest thing is, like all of you said, building relationships with kids, spending consistent time. We, for Young Life, have something called campaigners, where it's more Bible study looking, where it's deeper than what we would talk about at like a Young Life club, which is a bigger experience with lots of kids. It's more fun, entertaining to draw kids in. But then campaigners is a more smaller, intimate, kind of looking deeper at who God is and what Scripture says about God. And then there's the time that we spend going to games.
Need more there.
Going to plays, yeah, lots of things. Just recently, I started picking up 3 of my guys at like 5:30 in the morning. We play basketball at 6 before they go to school. So one helps me know that they're at school because I leave them at school. And then I go to work, so it's one way to spend time with them.
That's probably inside.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just fun, different ways to get to know kids in different capacities is huge. And it gets to see different ways that you can appreciate their humor and entertainment. Sometimes it's so different from what you and I see and what you and I know, but appreciating their creativity, their ability to just come up with different things that they come up with that is just super creative. Sometimes I'm like, how did you even come up with some of the things that these kids do to survive on a day-to-day? But again, affirming their drive and their will to succeed, but also helping them do that in a positive way, because it's not always that. And accept, too, that kids can't always give you details and discuss things. It's one of those hidden rules, too, that we just don't talk about this outside of the family, but also them knowing that can get them into trouble or people in their family in trouble. Pushing kids to say those things can often do damage to that relationship, and sometimes can even break the relationship forever if you push them to try to tell you things that they're either not ready to tell you or just can't because of the situation they're in. So.
And we've already talked about the mandatory reporter piece today, but be upfront if you are. The kids know oftentimes if you're someone that kind of fits that role of mandatory reporter. I've had multiple girls be like, I really want to tell you this, but I know that I can't because I know you'll have to report. I'll tell you when I'm ready. And don't push that. Be like, okay, thank you for like sharing that with me. Let me know if you ever need anything and move on from there. Don't expect them to divulge all this stuff when one, they're not ready like Darrick said, but two, like they have to be willing, going back to the whole family piece, they're gonna be willing, they have to be at a point where they are willing to give up their family for what they're about to tell you. And that's a place that no kid should ever have to be in. But unfortunately it is the reality, and some kids do get there and some kids don't. And our job is to be consistent regardless if they are or not.
I would say on the flip side of that, be ready for some of those kids that will just spill at the first chance that they hear somebody that can get them out of their situation.
Yeah.
I know Kelsey will tell you that there are kids that once they find out she's a reporter and that she can get them out of situations, they'll come to her just bawling like, you're my one way out of this. So be ready for kids that
On the both ends.
Yeah, on both ends, that might also just spill at the first chance because you're the first person that said that you could do something.
First person they trust, anyway, that says that they can do something. All right, so how do we make deposits? Same thing that Darrick was just talking about. Respect the demands and priority of relationships in their life. Kids oftentimes will show up to my class late. We'll just bail altogether when I'm supposed to be picking them up for somewhere because they've taken care of their younger siblings or something happened with their mom or whatever. And that, to us, I'm like, seriously, you missed half my class because you had to get your younger sister on the bus? Like, can't your family figure it out? Like, that's what I want to say, but that's not the reality. Relationships are huge. When we're talking, especially those times where we need to like knock some sense into them, use a firm voice out of respect. Don't lecture like a parent, because the second you start that whole lecture, they're turn off instantly. So it's okay to be firm. I'm firm with my kids all the time, but there's a difference between being a respectful firm and being a discouraging firm. This is huge. Help them in goal setting, listen to their dreams, help them think about their future, not only think about their future, but plan out steps on how they're going to get there. Help them identify resources. A lot of them know the resources now, like they can just Google it, but they don't really know how to get there. Like, even if it's literally like, okay, you need to go to this health clinic, what bus do we need to take to get you to that clinic? Let's figure that out. And teach them the hidden rules that we just talked about. And that is a lot of times just doing life with a kid is not like you're gonna sit down and be like, okay, we're gonna learn rule 1 today. Like, literally have them be a part of your life and let them see what you do. And that's gonna make them aware that those in poverty can learn. And a lot of times, like I said, it's not just money. So especially the kids that aren't necessarily lacking money, they just don't often see that they're lacking a lot of other resources. So just helping them be aware without saying like, yeah, you may have money, but you don't have this, this, and this. Just showing them that this is what it takes to be successful. It's not all about money all the time. These are the skills that you need. Lastly, the moral of the story, we should be asking and having conversations with our kids so that we can understand, not to tell them what to do. The second we start going into, well, I know better, because we might, but we go into that mentality, they're just going to turn their brain off. And not only discredit everything you're saying right now, you may move backwards in the relationship that you had with them.
So
we can just go super quick through this.
How do we know which kids are ready to go deeper or develop relationships that are, past that? Okay, I've identified what my hidden rules are, and I understand that I'm in poverty, but how do I go deeper? How do I figure out who this guy Jesus is? We call it fat kids. And so the F stands for faithful, so those kids that show up, that you develop a relationship with, that are consistent. Next is available, so they're there, they're willing to hear, they're emotionally available, they're just available for you to be a part of their lives. And they're teachable, they're eager to learn, they want to know why or how do I get out of this situation? How do I make my life better or different?
Because it's very easy for us to sit on the outside and be like, 1, you need Jesus. 2, you need out of your situation. Like, it's super easy for us to do that a lot of the time. But unless they're ready, it's pointless.
And I would say it's hard too as a mentor, like, because you're put in a group of kids that you think, I have to talk to all of these kids. Like,
Or
all
have
of
to
these
save
kids,
them.
I need to be involved in all of their lives. They all need to come to Jesus. They all need to get out of their situations. And that's not true. I mean, I think that if you come into it with that mentality, you're bound to lose almost all of them because you've tried to make too deep of a connection that some kids just aren't ready for. And that they might become fat kids later on, but we got to feed them first.
These are just verses that feel free to look through on your own time, but just obviously developing kids is very, very challenging. And these are just verses to show how Jesus dealt with certain obstacles, like lack of understanding, humility, faith, commitment, lack of power. So just on your own time. And I also have some resources that have helped us tremendously with working with kids. Just understanding poverty, communication across barriers is just a website, and Right Color Wrong Culture. There's a bunch more, but those are ones that our community, our Young Life area is really dug deep into. So yeah, any questions? Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. Oh, question?
No,
Oh.
I was just sitting here thinking, do you have some success stories to share of kids who
Yeah, one of my first kids, so probably 5 years ago that I really started this whole process with, as far as bigger than just I want to share the gospel with you, I'm going to get you out of poverty, your situation. It was crazy. Her sophomore year of high school, I actually, my second year of teaching, I had to go to court and testify against her dad. There's all these teachers that are like, oh, I've been teaching for 34 years and I've never had to do that. I'm like, well, thanks. Here, year 2. Literally, I had to sit on the stand, and she ended up being put in a foster home in a totally different city, Pleasant Hill, Oregon, and she went to David Douglas High School and then Pleasant Hill. Big shift. But now she is a CNA. She's married. Going to start the process of applying to nursing schools. It's amazing. And she literally came from nothing. She was a drug baby. Both of her parents were on meth when they conceived her, and talked about it all the time, oh, you're a mistake. We were just really high. And they just talked about it it was nothing. So she grew up with that. And there was physical abuse, drug abuse in the home, neglect, just literally everything that could go wrong went wrong with that poor girl. But yeah, she's rocking it now with a husband, and don't have kids yet, but they want kids, and it's cool. That's what keeps us going. We cling on to those. Well, even the guy that we talked about, Jediah, half our stories, he's still in high school.
He started out as a freshman who, again, kid of single mom to 3 brothers who are all full biological brothers, but then also has probably 5 or 6 other siblings that are scattered throughout the U.S. That he seldom talks to. Has had crazy situations where he's even had his own brother point a gun at his head. His brother has also found bodies, situations that are just, messed up. And initially I was like, man, this kid is not going anywhere. He's just so focused on being an entertainer, being, stuck in the poverty mindset. And now,
he's the NBA food stamps kid.
Yes. Stuck in that poverty mindset, but now is starting to open up to discussions. This is 3 years later about going to college and where can I go to college, and I want to get out of Portland so that I don't have to stay in my situation. So changing that shift, I think there were that whole sophomore year from freshman year was really just kind of getting to know him. Sophomore year, how do we change? And now junior year is all kind of settling in, I need to get out of here. So I mean, it's a 3-year shift, so it's not going to change overnight.
And he still has a lot of
and he still
friends.
has a year left of high school. We're trying to get him through. So, but it's moving in the right direction. So.
He's at least seeing what he wants. He's like very clear now, like, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. I want a home that I can like own and stay in. And those are things that we would have never heard him say before because he didn't even know they exist.
How's his jump shot?
Well, he's not eligible for basketball this year, actually. It was actually a blessing in disguise. That was huge for him, taking away the one thing he found his identity in. Now, sorry, you're not going to the NBA. You can't even play high school basketball. So now he's having to think about, like, his real future.
But he's also taking those mistakes and trying to impart that into, freshmen that he
Yeah.
runs into. Like,
He's my
don't think that you
TA.
can just
Oh my
pass
gosh.
this many classes. You have to do,
Yes.
all this stuff. And if you have morning practice, you need to go to bed so you can stay up through
Yeah.
the whole day of school. Because I didn't do that, and now I can't play. So he's, using his own experiences
Yep.
to teach kids. You can't just skate through.
No, he's my TA, and I often find him, I'm like up front teaching, and he's supposed to be like in the back working on stuff, and I often find him right next to me, like talking to the freshmen, like, you need to do this. Listen to her when she says this, because I did it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bring it in. He was like trying to write detentions the other day. I'm like, we're not quite. We're not there yet. But, yeah. Yeah, anything else?
How did you guys get started in this program?
Young Life?
We both were Young Life
Mhm.
kids.
Okay.
We met in high school, did in high school, did Young Life together, and then through college kind of split up. And then met, we're the 2%.
Yeah. Be prepared. A lot of the students are like, Mrs. Stiff, Mrs.
What
Stiff.
about them? Oh,
Yeah.
We broke up for a significant amount of time, but yeah, that is how we got connected. It changed our lives. Even though we came from two totally different ends of the spectrum, like my parents were still together, I was never really living in poverty, where he was the exact opposite. Young Life kind of brought us together, and yeah, it's cool. I was actually on staff for Young Life for a while after college and did that whole thing. And then it was awkward because we were broken up at the time, and I was like, when I graduate, I'm going to come back and lead at David Douglas High School. Like, I know that's where God wants me. And he had the same thing, and I was like, nope, I called it first. I was like, I'm not going to be leading with my ex-boyfriend, and here we are, got a different plan. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.